All right, I will call to order the regular council meeting of Tuesday, June 4th, 2024 at 6 o'clock in Cayce City Hall chambers. Thank you for those who have joined us in person and online. The press and public have been notified according to the Freedom of Information Act.
Yes, Mayor.
Thank you. Who has our invocation tonight?
Mayor Pro Tem James.
Thank you. Pray with me, if you will. Our most gracious and heavenly and grateful, Father, that we could be in your presence. Father God, we thank you for this day. We thank you for our city. And Father God, we thank you for an opportunity to be able to serve in this city. So many people serve in so many capacities, and Father God, we know that it takes many hands to make a city like this, and we thank you for every person that gives of themselves to grow this city, to make it a safe place for us to raise our children and to call home. Father God, I thank you especially for those city workers. Thank you for keeping them in the palm of your hand, and the safety that you continue to shed upon them. And Father, tonight as we deliberate, and one of the most important things is a budget for the future years. God, we just ask for your wisdom in all that we say and do. And may your works be bountiful in the end. And it's in your Son, Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, well, you have before you a request for the approval of minutes from May 7th, regular council meeting, May 15th, budget work session, and May 15th, regular council meeting.
Mayor, make a motion that we approve all three.
Okay,
Second.
thank you. Any discussion? I'll call the question.
Mayor Pro Tem James.
Yes.
Councilmember Thomas.
Yes.
Councilmember Sock.
Yes.
Councilmember Carter.
Yes.
Mayor.
Yes, thank you, so moved. We have public comment regarding items on the agenda.
Yes, ma'am. Two people have signed up. First, Mr. Randy Gibson, item 4A. Sure.
How are y'all? My name's Randy Gibson. I'm the Executive Director of the Lexington County Recreation Agent Commission. This is the chairman of our commission, Mr. Larry Mack. The reason I'm here is I was approached by two council members wanting to know what they could do or what needed to be done to get improvements done at two parks, State Street Park and possibly Sunnyside. Usually the way it works with municipalities of the parks that we have a partnership with, if the municipality would like to see some improvements besides general maintenance and everything, they will put a list together, a wish list, or contact me, email me, and I will present it to the commission, and we'll see what we can do. If there's some big ticket item request, we usually go back possibly to the municipalities and say, could you give us some financial assistance, since it is a partnership. Just this fiscal year at State Street Park, we have made capital improvements right at $50,000. We put a new playground system in, and we also resurfaced the tennis courts and painted them for, well, of course, tennis, and added pickleball. But during the conversation with some of the council members, it was basically wanted to know what services we do provide for the citizens of Cayce. Besides being a Recreation Commission, we're also the Council on Aging for Lexington County. We provide Meals on Wheels, home care, all the recreation. So the citizens of Cayce, they play, if they play Dixie Youth Baseball, they play at Howard Park. We have Tri-City Leisure Center, named because it was built basically to serve 3 municipalities, West Columbia, Cayce, and Springdale. We have Cayce Tennis and Fitness Center that serves the citizens, Spires Recreation, along with Pine Grove Sports Complex, where adults can play softball. Midland, the Cayce youth play football at Midland Sports Complex. And also they play soccer at Old Barnwell. So even though a lot of our facilities are not in the city limits of Cayce, Cayce residents use our facilities. I know Mr. Sox is aware of this because when he was young, he rode BMX, and the BMX track is actually in the Red Bank area of Lexington County, one of our facilities, along with the equestrian facility, where I know a member of County Council's daughter who went on to go to school at University of Georgia and was on the equestrian team. She would go out and Red Bank at the equestrian facility and ride quite often. But I just wanted to kind of give you an update on what we do, and also if y'all do want some major improvements to the parks, the 2 parks that we have a partnership with, and they're pretty large. If there's any large ticket item, we will probably ask for some financial assistance. So that's anything.
No, we'll be going on hopefully getting going on the pickleball court over here.
I forgot about that.
We're working on that, and it was a pretty big ticket item for us to start with. We didn't realize how much it was gonna cost to build it, but, we're gonna get it. It's gonna be a nice one too.
Construction should begin on the Cayce, the 16 pickleball courts at Spires facility. Should start mid-July. And as Mr. Mack said, we had to rebid it. That's why construction hadn't already began. So over $1.3 million, 376 is funded through a grant. So the commission's putting in right at $1 million for the facility. So we are trying to invest in Cayce and provide services for the citizens. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gibson. Thank you, Mr. Mack. Was there anyone else?
No, ma'am, that was it.
Okay, thank you. All right, we have items for discussion and possible approval. You have before you discussion and approval of the Accommodations Tax Committee's recommendation for distribution of funding for fiscal year 24-25.
Mayor, if I may, I have submitted a form of recusal for 3A and 3B for professional reasons,
Okay,
and I'll excuse myself while y'all convene.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of council. In your prior fiscal year, $87,435 were granted in ATAX awards to applications. This year, the city received 8 Accommodations Tax Fund grant requests totaling $60,875. The Accommodations Tax Committee did meet. They recommended awarding $51,250 for those 8 projects in the upcoming year. They also discussed the 30% award to dedicated tourism organizations, and I'll go into some detail here in a moment. What we are projecting for revenue for FY 2025 is $160,000. There are some statutory distributions that are listed in your report there. Ultimately, $31,750 will be allocated to the general fund off the top. 30% must go to regional tourism dedicated entities. That's estimated to be $38,475, which leaves $89,775 for your use for tourism. And often we do provide those in grants. The $38,475 was discussed by the Accommodations Tax Committee For dedication to those regional tourism agencies, we received 3 grant requests from Experience Columbia, the CWC Chamber of Commerce, and Lake Murray Country. You see in your packet that they effectively awarded about a third split, 35% to Experience Columbia, which would equal $13,466.25. The same to CWC Chamber of Commerce, and then 30% in the amount of $11,542.50 going to Lake Murray Country. So that's the recommendation for how to allocate the 30% we're required to give. Of the remaining budget, they reviewed those 8 applications you see in your list there. $7,000 is recommended for Cayce Ad Specialties, $5,000 for Police Specialties, $1,500 for the Cayce Women's Club Hot Flash 5K, $20,000 for Tartan Day South, $15,000 for Cayce Fall Fest, $1,000 for Colonial Village at Tartan Day. That's what our museum and the Museum Commission puts on each year. $750 for a night at the museum event. It's hopefully going to take place this year, and $1,000 for the African American Legends event. So the remaining $38,525 that was not recommended for award to anybody by the Accommodations Tax Committee would be placed in reserve for needed tourism capital expenditures. You have a comprehensive breakdown of what I've just described in your packet. Again, this is the recommendation of the Accommodations Tax Committee unanimously. They met April 9th, 2024. So again, the Accommodations Tax Committee recommends City Council approve $51,250 in accommodations tax grant awards for the upcoming fiscal year, and that $38,407 go to the regional tourism agencies as outlined herein. Happy to try to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve $51,250 in accommodations tax grant awards for fiscal year 2025, 2024, and $38,475 to regional tourism agencies as outlined in the white paper?
Mayor, I certainly don't mind making the motion, but I would personally like to see the allocations for the regional tourism to 30%, which equals the $38,475. I would like to see a reallocation there, and I don't know how to put that. Do I put it as an amendment to the motion or put the numbers into motion? And what I would like to do is, if you look at the bottom allocations of Cayce Ad, Police, Hot Flash, Tartan Day, Cayce Fall Fest, Colonial Village at Tartan Day, Night Museum, and everything, all this money stays in Cayce. I would like to see of the 30% regional tourism allocations, I would like to see most of that money stay in Cayce with our chamber. So that's why I want to put in my motion to reallocate those monies to make a higher percentage of this money go to the Cayce West Columbia Chamber and their regional tourism efforts. And my motion would be to reallocate the regional tourism efforts to Experience Columbia, a total of $9,612.50. Lake Murray Country, a total of $9,612.50. And Cayce West Columbia Chamber of Commerce, $19,250. And then the second aspect to that with the other tourism allocations to put in my motion as presented.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Tracy, I do have a question regarding the other tourism allocations. Everything looks to be funded that was requested except for the Hot Flash. Do we have the reasoning for that?
I believe, based on the minutes, it was based on what could be funded
Gotcha. Okay.
by their interpretation of the ATAX law.
Thank you. Phil, I agree. I think your reasoning for keeping some of that money in Cayce West Columbia, I agree with it, and appreciate you bringing that up.
Thank you.
I agree with you too, Councilman Carter.
Thank you.
I will say I have concerns about that. While the money should benefit Cayce, you've got, some pretty serious numbers here from Lake Murray country and what they do to bring tourists into our region. So I just want to make sure we're giving the money in a way that brings a return on investment to our city. So, you know, I'm not sure. I think all three of these agencies, Experience Columbia, the CWC Chamber, and Lake Murray Country, I'm sure they all, you know, do a great job. But the numbers that we've gotten from Lake Murray Country and what they've done to bring people into our city and to bring PR into our city, they've presented to this council before, is pretty strong. I would actually love it if y'all were open to maybe giving less to Experience Columbia, as long as we were still giving the 11.5 to Lake Murray Country. I think they do a really good job for us.
Well, certainly that's, I'm sure in your opinion and theirs, they do. Yes, I recall the presentation that they have given in the past. But this document, you read something, I was just handed this like 3 minutes ago.
It's the same thing we got when they presented to us.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's got,
Okay.
it's got the
So,
return on investment in it.
So you would rather see more to Lake Murray than to Experience? Well, if you look at Experience Columbia's numbers, granted, those are massive numbers over there. That they, as far as their budget goes, and they certainly, I don't think, I'd have no problem making an adjustment there to, you know, give my proposal, we're giving Lake Murray Country, what, $3,900 and some change less, and we're lessening Experience Columbia by $3,800. Okay.
How many staff people do each of these three agencies have that work solely on tourism?
I don't know, Cayce West, you got James, and there's 2 or 3 people
He's not tourism, though. He's business.
that I don't know the answer to that question. I don't know how many, I don't know the staffing of any of these entities.
Mayor, to my knowledge, is the Chamber and Visitors Program Center. So all their employees also handle the visitor and tourism aspects of the chamber, outside of just doing business for the local CWC community.
Okay.
Yes,
I remember reading in the past it was a volunteer committee that did visitors.
There is a committee, a tourism committee, but they don't do the day-to-day operations of the visitor program. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so but they do tourism in addition to the business stuff, whereas Experience Columbia and Lake Murray Country have how many staff people that just do tourism?
Oh, you would know those numbers.
I don't.
Oh, or you talk about
I know we had at least 2 present that one day. I think they've got 4 or 5 out at Lake Murray Country.
Yes,
So,
ma'am.
yeah, I just want to make sure there's dedicated staff that are, you know, focused on bringing tourism to our city and
Yes,
that
ma'am.
it's not an afterthought to additional
Yes, ma'am.
business. But
Well,
number-wise, what does that look like?
If I did my math correctly there, off the top of my head, I was terribly inaccurate. It appears that I have reduced Lake Murray Country's allocation by $1,930. I would be happy to amend my motion to bring theirs back to the recommendation of $11,542.50, and then take my 9612 whatever, 9612 for Experience Columbia, just reduce that by the $1,920. And y'all got to check my math here.
I'll do it. Where's Kelly? That brings it to $7,682.50.
On Experience. Okay, amend it to $7,682.50 for Experience Columbia, and back to $11,542.50 for Lake Murray Country, and then $19,250 for CWC Chamber. Is that an amendment or just a change?
No, you made the original motion. If those numbers are,
That adds up.
yeah. Any other discussion on that? Good? Okay, I'm good with that, supporting that, but I want to know, I'd like a report from each of these entities
Absolutely.
on what are they bringing, what return on investment is our city getting out of those dollars? And I'd like to know how many dedicated staff members they have, not as an aside to another part of their job, but how many dedicated staff members they have working just on tourism. So, all right, I'll call the question.
Councilmember Thomas?
Yes.
Councilmember Socks?
Yes.
Councilmember Carter?
Yes.
Mayor?
Yes, thank you. And if we can get that, maybe at just a update at the next, ask each one, actually, we can ask each one of those entities to just email staff, and then they can, if you just forward that to council, that'd be great.
Yes, ma'am.
Unless the public wants to know, and we can share that as well. Thank you. All right, next we have discussion and approval of hospitality tax grant funding for fiscal year 24-25.
Mayor, I did submit a request to recuse myself since I was a part of a committee to act for H-tax from the city.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is Councilman James, did he recuse himself from this one too?
Yes, he did.
So one more recusal, we can go on. But I'm not, so we go.
During the last fiscal year, $61,455 in hospitality funds were awarded to grant recipients. This amount did not include the city events such as Fall Fest and Christmas in Cayce and the soiree. For the upcoming fiscal year, the city received 9 hospitality tax grant requests totaling $196,625. Starting this year, too, we thought it best that the city events be separately submitted. With those two and the review of the staff committee, staff recommends awarding the total of $183,100 for 9 projects and our city events. The following table reflects that. We anticipate in the upcoming year $1,450,000 in H-tax revenues. We recommend holding in reserve $100,000 of that. We transfer to our budget, our general fund budget for operation maintenance and capital items that are tourism related or hospitality related in the amount of $1,150,000. That leaves remaining eligible for grants and non-city events to be $200,000. Your next page shows you a breakdown of the recommendations. I'll go through those in order. We recommend $32,000 for Tartan Day South, $10,000 for the Hall of Horrors, $4,600 for the Hot Flash 5K of the Cayce Women's Club, $2,000 for the CWC Chambers Cares Riverwalk Rabbit Run. That's a lot to say. $6,000 for the CWC Visitor Programs Parade, $40,000 for Christmas in Cayce, $65,000 for Soiree on State, $20,000 for the Cayce Fall Fest, and $3,500 for the Museum Christmas Traditions. So those last 4 are city events that we put on every year. The remaining $16,900 not awarded by the Hospitality Tax Committee will be placed in reserve for needed tourism-related capital expenditures. You have a breakdown and a chart on the next page. Of course, you know you may approve, deny, or reduce the amount of those requests. Staff recommends City Council approve the Hospitality Tax Committee's allocation that's outlined herein for the upcoming fiscal year.
All right, is there a motion to approve the staff recommendation for the Hospitality Tax Committee's allocation outlined herein for fiscal year 2024-2025?
I move that we, motion to approve with the parade being increased to the requested amount of $8,000 for the Cayce West Columbia Chamber of Commerce from the 6 recommended.
I'm out of the rest of it.
Yeah, that was the only amendment to it. Sorry, I was trying to pull the actual white paper for it with all the requests in here.
And what's the, I know there's, on both of these, you've changed the numbers to benefit the chamber, but what's the reasoning?
Well, I mean, they requested 8,000, they got 6,000. West Columbia continues to match them, so I don't see why we wouldn't, considering the parade goes through both cities and impacts both cities equally. Especially if we have 17,000 we're sending back to reserves.
Okay, and for the prior one, what was the reasoning?
The prior,
The accommodations tax?
we're on hospitality tax.
I know, I'm just following the theme, like what was the reasoning for increasing?
Keeping money in Cayce and West Columbia. We're on hospitality tax right now, so I'm looking for the, go up so I can get the motion. So it would be motion to approve. Where's it up there? Hospitality tax grant funding for FY 24-25 with all as requested or recommended by staff, with the exception of including $2,000 to match the requested amount by the Cayce West Columbia Chamber of Commerce for the parade day.
Okay, but, okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so the Hot Flash also asked for, the Women's Club asked for more than they got recommended. Are we not worried about that at all?
Well, I assumed that that was based on what Tracy said on the last one, that some of the stuff, including things like T-shirts, were not approved in that. But, you know, if you would like to amend the motion or add a motion to include some extra funding for them, since there is a balance, I don't mind considering that.
Well, and then Hall of Horrors too. I'm just curious why we're just focused on the chamber, but we're not adjusting anybody else, and we're making assumptions based on why they didn't get approved. I mean, do we have any of that information?
I'd love to fund everyone as much as we can, you know, but no one reached out to me from any of those to inform me that the accommodations and hospitality tax committees didn't fund them fully.
But they did from the chamber then?
I've spoken with, not staff from the chamber, but folks from the chamber, so, yeah. I mean, I'd love to consider, I mean, indeed, do we ever zero it out, Tracy? Do we ever, I mean, I know it's a projection, but, you know, do we ever get closer than we are and fund things a little more?
I'm trying to look at the last year here. 196,000, if you look at that next page, 196,000 was requested, 185,000 was approved. I mean, you don't always meet, and they don't always use the full amount. But, I mean, clearly you have 16,900 that hasn't been awarded.
Yeah, that's fine, no worries. I'll call the question.
Councilmember Socks?
Yes.
Councilmember Carter?
Yes.
Mayor?
No. So moved. Next, we have discussion and approval of a quote from 3D Dirt Works to repair and repave Spencer Place Road. We'll wait for our other council members to join us again. Thank you, Mike.
As we've recently discussed, the City of Cayce currently has a maintenance agreement for Spencer Place Road with the Cayce Housing Authority. That road is in a state of disrepair and needs repaving. At Council's direction on March 5th, 2024, the city issued a request for proposal, RFP, to repair Spencer Place Road. The city received no responses to that RFP. We made several attempts to contact vendors directly and still received no responses. It's our understanding that there's just a lot of great work going around. And we just really struggled to get some responses to the RFP in a traditional manner. We then discussed with our contractor, our on-call general contractor, 3D Dirt Works, their ability to do the work. They don't typically do paving, but they do have subcontractors that they could work with that they were able to get to agree to the work. So staff recommends foregoing the formal bid processes that did not get us anywhere and engage our on-call general contractor to repave Spencer Place Road to state standards and good repair. Our contractor, of course, is 3D Dirt Works. They've been that for us for about a year now. They submitted a proposal for $46,865. Staff recommends that the City Council approve the city manager to accept the quote from our on-call general contractor, 3D Dirt Works, to repair and repave Spencer Place Road in the amount of $46,865. The funds will be expended from the city's fund balance if so approved, which has a current unassigned balance of $9.2 million. Happy to try and answer any questions.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the staff recommendation to approve the city manager to accept the quote from our on-call general contractor, 3D Dirt Works, to repave Spencer Place Road in the amount of $46,865 and expending the funds from the city's fund balance, which
I move that we approve the staff recommendation.
okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? I'll call the question.
Mayor Pro Tem James,
Yes.
Councilmember Thomas,
Yes.
Councilmember Socks.
Yes.
Councilmember Carter.
Yes.
Mayor,
Yes, thank you, so moved. We have discussion,
If I could rise to a parliamentary point.
Danny.
The vote, as I understand it, on 3B was 2-1 on the motion.
Danny, do you mind going in the microphone, please? I won't be able to hear.
Under section 2-69C, the affirmative vote of 3 members of council is needed to adopt any motion or pass any measure other than with reference to meetings and adjournments. So that motion failed because it did not receive 3 votes. So there is currently no motion on the floor with regard to the hospitality tax grant funding.
does that mean that staff can bring it back to us at the next meeting, or?
Well, or council could take other action if it wished.
Right now or at the next meeting?
Well, it's still on the floor, it's still an open item, so you could do it now or defer it to the next meeting if that was the vote of council.
So a failed motion is still an open motion?
Well, there's no motion, there's no motion carried with regard to hospitality tax funding. A 2-1 vote is not a vote sufficient to pass the motion.
Okay. Well, anything we do, I think requires both of our council members to go back out.
So they're recused on this. So that would leave the floor open for further motions.
Okay.
Danny. So what you said, since it did not pass, by default, did it fail? Or was it,
It did not pass, so it failed.
Danny, will you,
It did not pass, so it
so
failed.
it's,
A 2-1 vote.
it is a,
We have an unusual provision in our code and
understand?
which requires when you only have 3 members, all 3 have to vote in favor of something other than to adjourn.
I see.
okay, thank you, Danny. Gentlemen, any thoughts on what you'd like to do? Mindy, what page, sorry, you're not on that page either.
Section
Trying to go back. No, sir, not that. No, I'm looking at the, trying to get us back to
Page 181? I'm not sure.
181, I'll try that.
I'm
No, it's
No.
above that.
Okay. I
It's
don't
like
remember.
140.
140? Thank you.
Oh, no, it's your motion.
Okay, there we go.
I'm trying to get it pulled back.
Yeah,
up to
140.
It's behind you on that screen, but.
Yeah, good point, actually. All right. There's the full request. So if I have it correct, it was 196 requested, 183 recommended, and the estimated available is 200 in total. I mean, I'd love to just give everyone the full requested amount, but I know that's not as realistic considering that only gives about $4,500 a leeway based on what we bring in. I mean, ultimately, I think that we should fund the parade at at the full amount they requested, considering how many folks they bring in year over year, and it gets bigger year over year. But I do understand, Mayor, that, you know, there's a number of others on here that are not funded at their requested amount.
What was can you help us understand the difference there? I see a note that says no nourishments.
I mean, I'm trying to find that in the staff report from the meeting. Again, my assumption is, Kelly, did you attend this? Yes. Do you want to speak to that?
Please.
please.
Thank you, Kelly.
When the H-Tax Committee convened, they looked at the budget that was proposed for the parade day. It included nourishments for the volunteers and the requested fire personnel and police personnel. The H-Tax Committee did not feel that that was a relevant expense under H-Tax grants, so they took that one budget line out for nourishments, and they're funding the rest of it.
So,
Thank you.
thank you. Question though too, so back to the hot flash, the T-shirts, the notes there, what would that, I mean, then T-shirts must have 5 locally owned food.
The H-Tax Committee felt that T-shirts could be a viable expense on H-Tax as long as they were supporting the local restaurants.
Gotcha.
So they have asked that the funding be contingent on advertising on the volunteer T-shirts, all the giveaway T-shirts. Our local restaurants just moving advertising.
Gotcha. Thank you.
But is
You're
that
welcome.
included, that part's included in what they were given, or that's the gap? So
Correct.
they can
They
come back to us?
funded the T-shirts on that case. They
Yep.
just add a condition.
Okay, but there was still a difference, a gap between the requested and recommended, and I know we're making you think on the spot of all of that, but
Yeah, don't make me remember.
Yeah.
I'd have to look back and
Yeah,
get back to you. I
that's
don't
okay.
remember that one.
no worries.
I apologize.
According to the minutes
Thank you,
in the
Kelly.
packet, it says that they recommended removing the cost for advertising since ATAX was covering those expenses. It could be that you make a motion to fund them at the full amount and ask them both to submit revised budgets to match that
Well, it's not just them, it's also the J.C.'s.
with qualifying expenses.
So, I mean, if there was a legitimate reason for the gap between the 6 and the 8, do y'all still want to support the change in the increased amount for the chamber?
That's fair. Now, let me ask Tracy, if they were funded at $8,000 by West Columbia for this, that would just indicate that their committee thought that was an appropriate use of funds?
Or they ask for different
I got you, or ask for something different
expenses.
through
I
that.
don't know
got
the
you.
answer to
Okay.
that. But it could be both.
I got you. Well, that's fine, I'll revert back.
Just approve the staff recommendation?
That's fine, I'll approve the staff recommendation, or I'll move that we approve the staff recommendation on hospitality tax funding request for FY 24-25.
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion?
I wish we could fund everyone at their requested amount, but I understand.
Okay, we'll call the question.
Councilmember Socks?
Yes.
Councilmember Carter?
Yes.
Mayor?
Yes, thank you, so moved. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
Right, I think we're down at like 221 or somewhere around there. Hang on.
I got it for
Two-
you.
Hey, so I could move around a little
220.
bit easier, and then I printed them from the back.
Oh, yeah. So I think we're back to 220. Okay, so the next agenda item is discussion and approval of ordinance 2024-06 to adopt an annual budget, levy a property tax, and provide revenue for the city of Cayce for the fiscal year ending June 30, 2025, and to adopt and establish certain new fees and charges with amounts. This is the first reading.
Everybody's drinks refilled. It's a long conversation for me to read. let me orient you a little bit to what's in your packet. So you do have what's the ordinance, and that affects the levy on taxes, any of the fees that we provide or requires the city, as well as adoption of the budget. That's in one ordinance. You do have two memos in your packet, and they're in order. I'll go through those. The first one is about the recommended budget itself, and the next one is recommendations for our master fee schedule. So I'll go through those two memos. You also have in your packet the recommended budget for both utility fund and general fund, recommended by staff. That's the long spreadsheet, master fee schedule, a capital list for both, and then these two white papers. So it's been a long time getting here. I've had a great time this year working with you we've had 4 work sessions leading up to this. I think they've been some of the most robust we've ever had. You know, we started in February with an update on sort of the state of our budgeting and sort of where we sat locally and across the nation and what we could expect. In March, we met with our utility department. We went through their funds and their requested budget, as well as our consultant that's helping us with a rate study that was approved last year. In April, we did the same thing with the general fund. We had all the general fund directors come and sit down and describe and propose their budgets for you. And then in May, we had another discussion of both of those where we sort of talked about options you had for balancing what was a pretty out of balance budget for both halves. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's the hardest year I've had since I've been here. I've had 3 kind of interesting phases of budgeting with you. The first couple years, we were sort of just in a real high of having some big projects come to the city. Our budget was good. Our revenues were trending well upwards. Then COVID hit. I think we did an amazing job to handle what we didn't know about budgeting and what we didn't know would happen with the closure of things. We had a very conservative couple years there where we did well, better than we anticipated because of some of the prior great work that you all had done and the revenues increasing. And then that third phase was the last 2 years where we had a lot of ARPA money coming down from the federal government that was helping us to balance and infuse a lot of capital into what would otherwise be a tough year. So I would really call this phase 4. We're out of all of those things. We're out of COVID conservatism, and then we're out of a conservative budget anyway, and then out of ARPA being there to help sort of back up and support some of our losses. So what we have before you is our general fund budget. I'll start with that. What we propose, it is currently balanced at $19,949,448. From here on out, I'll try to just summarize the main amounts. We do have the following in our projected revenues. Staff is recommending an increase of 8 mills. That would take us from 58.1 to 66.1. That will increase our revenues by $543,000. We also recommend a $5 per month increase in sanitation fees. That would take us from $13.50 a month to $18.50 a month for customers. That would give us a $287,100 increase in our revenue. As we typically do, we do have a utility fund transfer for indirect costs of $2.1 million. I mentioned earlier a $1.1 million transfer from our hospitality tax revenue. Also, we would have grant funding from what you just approved for our city events totaling $128,500. That's in there. To balance, particularly for our capital costs and some other things, we do recommend transferring from our unassigned reserve account $598,000, close to $600,000. We have a conservative estimate of accommodations taxes. We just went through that. We continue to have a good relationship with School District 2. We have $820,000 coming from them for our 75% cost share SROs and 100% that we have from the state. We do need to purchase some vehicles and other things for the fire department in an amount of $600,000. We would recommend doing that as a lease purchase. So how that looks in your budget is a revenue of $600,000, it's an expenditure of $600,000. We need to pay for the interest and principal on that. Included in those expenditures are capitals totaling $426,500. We have a municipal complex study that we're recommending. We know we have definitely grown out of room here. Our fire department has grown out of room, and our police department has. We need to look at what we do for the future. We have obviously new computers on a replacement plan. We've got broken office furniture to replace, some IT backup upgrades. We'd like to study the utility indirect transfer that I just mentioned earlier to make sure we're keeping pace there. Small things for the police department, firehouse. We do need to replace the concrete pad in front of the firehouse, 8 sets of replacement bunker gear, some roll carts, some fuel generator backup pumps, And $132,000 is being recommended for our budgeting software purchase. We actually recommend taking that out of some interest we've earned on our ARPA money. We do have hospitality tax funding recommended out of our fund balance of $26,000 to take care of some things we need at the museum. I think you've heard we have that great Catawba pottery exhibit. We want to find a way to showcase that, continue to finish out our public safety exhibit, do some additional work at our 12,000-year history park as we gear up for the Revolutionary War 250th anniversary. It does recommend one new full-time employee, $122,000, I'm sorry, two. $122,000, $800 with benefits. That would be for an economic development director. And a second new full-time employee of a driver two for the sanitation department at $58,603. We're recommending across the board $2,550 cost of living increase for their general fund employees. That represents about 1.5% increase to 8% based on their existing salary. The total for that would be $487,811. There are some operational expense increases we recommend totaling $144,825 in total. We have some employees we'd like to send to management classes. We need some building repairs at the range. All of our operating costs have gone up for our vehicles, need some additional supplies and uniforms, and some additional training. We'd like to bolster the facade grant program by $10,000, as well as our demolition program by $15,000. We have been requested by some outside entities to increase, we do also have to take into consideration the cost of some of our external costs, such as insurance at 19% and our PIBA insurance increase of 11.8%. That's covered in your expenditures in the budget that's proposed before you now. Moving over to the utility budget, it is balanced at $42,904.761. It includes a 25% rate increase for water and sewer for all customers inside and outside. It also has a $2,550 cost of living increase for all of its employees, similar to what I just proposed for the general fund employees. That represents a 2% to 7% increase based on their salary. Totals $225,285. It does continue to meet our debt coverage obligations for the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bonds that we still have, as well as their payment. It includes 3 new full-time employees for the utility department, a meter tech 2 at $42,000, a water treatment plant trainee at $52,000, and a wastewater treatment plant operator at $55,000. That would all be funded under the 25% increase that's being proposed. That's what we're considering operations. All capital that's being recommended at $2.2 million would have to come from a reserve account. You see a long list of those items there. Totaling that $2.2 million coming from 3 different reserve accounts. $600,000 is recommended to come from the wastewater renewal and replacement reserve account, $784,000 from our capital equipment reserve account, $895,000 from our water sewer capacity reserve account. And again, that we have to consider for the utility department the same thing as the general fund, our SMRF increase of 19% and our PIBA insurance increase of 11.8%. We do look forward to continuing to enhance our utility bill presentment online. So that's a lot of listed things that are both funded and recommended for revenue in those 2 white papers. I do have in that white paper the impact of these recommended increases. I don't take that lightly at all. It does recommend, again, the 8 mills. That would be for an average $250,000 homeowner, owner-occupied, $80 a year. Sanitation costs at $5 a month, of course, would be $60 a year. Using an average usage of utility water and sewer at a 25% increase would come to about $168 a year. So that total annual cost of what we're proposing to a $250,000 homeowner would be $308 a year, $25 a month. If you move on to your next memo, that references the master fee schedule. As you know, and I think everybody knows, we're all getting hit with it. Everything has gone up. We've had a lot of inflation. The cost of our services the cost of the chemicals that we need for water and sewer and everything that we're buying and fuel is up a lot. So that's why we're proposing those increases. Some of those I just went over, but they're documented again in your master fee schedule. Again, at 25% for sewer and water usage. An increase in capacity fees for water and sewer. You see a chart there that's recommended. Again, increasing sanitation fee from $13.15 to $18.50. An increase for the collection of construction debris for our sanitation department from $220 now to $250 for a 20-yard container and $330 to $350 for a 30-yard container. There's a couple minor modifications to the business license to keep pace with state law. You know, a long time ago, we discussed how we deal with billiard halls. That's updated here in your master fee schedule. We do recommend increasing the police department special duty pay from $55 to $65 an hour. That's fully covered by the user that requests them, and that's all being managed by a third-party contract that was approved by you probably last year. Also recommend doing the same thing for the fire department, and also charging for special requests for our trucks to show up at events. We do want to revise, this is small and minor, our community tool shed, how we charge for damages to the stuff there, the same for the museum. And as last year, we would pass on all credit card fees to the user. So included in this packet, you have that master fee schedule. It's a long set of pages. The ordinance, if you were to adopt it, again, tonight's first reading. We'll have second reading at the end of the month, as well as the public hearing. Between now and then, we'll do a lot of public education based on whatever you recommend. At this time, that's the proposal of staff.
Thank you. So do you want those motions together for both of those staff recommendations, or?
You can take it by reading the item, I guess, as an ordinance.
All right, well, let's do the first one. So you have before you a request for a staff recommendation for approval of first reading of the fiscal year 2024-2025 general fund and utility fund budgets as presented herein.
For purposes of discussion, Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, you have the floor.
Yep, so I have gotten a few questions about the vehicle, the amount of vehicles that the city has. I know that we're requesting some new vehicles, some new replacement vehicles. I spoke to Assistant City Manager today about these vehicles and when we decommission some of them, and, you know, certain vehicles we have for the police department, and they're outfitted for the department. Some of them are for water, wastewater, code, different types of uses. I think that, you know, for transparency purposes, I'd love maybe at our next council meeting to have staff speak to, you know, what vehicles are in what department, and, you know, how many each department might have, what those uses might be for, why you might see those after hours or on the weekends with folks that are on call and things of that nature. I think that would help with some of the questions that I've been receiving, and I would love to hear about that as well. And that, you know, I think touching on the cost difference and getting something new versus trying to fix certain issues these days, and how different that is with things that are really just made to break these days, especially vehicles and mechanical pieces. Outside of that, you know, I think that originally we had discussed some lower millage increases. I know that at one point we added in the sanitation fee increase, and I know we've talked about sanitation fees, or the sanitation department itself. I think our goal, or the previous council's goal years ago, was to have that department be self-sustaining. And, you know, I'd love to see a plan at some point, whether that be a 5-year, 7, 8, 9, 10-year plan on how we can get that to be self-sustaining, whether that be through millage, whether that be through a set fee, or whether that be, you know, through both. That's something I would like to see in the future. But, you know, with 3 increases across the board, I really think that it's a good bit for folks to swallow today. And, you know, I would like to strike the sanitation fee increase, or entertain striking the sanitation fee increase in lieu of covering those expenditures that it would cover at $287,100 from our unrestricted fund balance. So that's kind of my thoughts on the general fund. I'm curious to hear if anyone else has any other thoughts on that.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Tracy and Jim, let me first say thank you for all your work on this budget. I know many others, Kelly and Mike and whatnot, but it seemed like over the last month or so, I've been able to communicate a great deal with both of y'all. And as you said, Tracy, this is the hardest budget I think I've seen. And certainly it's the hardest budget that you've seen in your 5 years. But communication has assisted this a great deal. and I understand this is a living document, and that you are trying to do everything you can to be able to balance the budget. We had discussed a great deal about the 4 meals or the 8 meals, and a meal does not bring in a whole bunch. It's still an impact on our community, I understand that, but a meal really does not bring in a whole bunch. But moving from 4 meals to 8 meals, of course, doubles whatever that is. And then the sanitation costs, I'm going to go back to what Councilmember Sachs mentioned. I have no concern about us moving to eventually allow the fee to pay for sanitation. I believe I'd get a hoorah from everybody in here that our sanitation department does an awesome job. It's just an awesome job. They really do a great job. But the sanitation fee, the mayor and I were talking about it in one of the previous council meetings or budget meetings about what our original intent was. And I go back to the May 31st, 2013, and I actually seconded the motion when what we were trying to do is move into a 5-year plan after increasing the sanitation fee that year up $3. So I want to say I would love to see, a plan put in place that we can educate the community on exactly where we're heading to. What does it cost? And let the community know exactly what it costs and how long is it going to take us to catch up with that so that we can make sure that the sanitation fee is taking care of the sanitation department. It's important for me to kind of educate our community that's listening. Our sanitation crew, again, does a wonderful job. But in this budget, Tracy and Jim have eliminated the lowest 2 pay grades because that's where most of our sanitation workers were. And these guys were making minimal, very minimal. I appreciate you guys doing that and looking at that, to be able to move them from almost poverty to someplace that they need to be. My hope is that increasing the meals will continue to keep that in there, even if this council decides not to go with a sanitation cost of some type, but that the meals would keep that into the budget. And then finally, I don't know that Councilman Sachs touched on this, but we do have $9 million in our revenue fund balance, and Tracy and others have done a really good job of making sure that we keep a correct amount on hand so that it takes, so that anybody that we're borrowing money from smiles upon us and knows that we have money on hand so that the interest rates are not as high as what they could be. And also that if there was a rainy day in the city of Cayce, i.e. COVID, we could continue to work. And that's important that we keep a certain amount of that in there. But that may not mean all of it. And Tracy, I think that you've pulled a certain amount to be able to balance the budget from that as well.
And what I just described, yes, sir.
That's all I have on the general fund.
Anybody? Well, this is not just about general fund. Well, you have before you both have said general fund, but this is the motion is for the general fund and utility fund, so I just want to make sure everybody's,
Yeah, yes, ma'am.
okay, thank you.
So first, I just want to thank city staff, Jim, Tracy, Mike. Y'all have done a great job trying to educate me on my first ever budget. I want to thank the mayor and my fellow councilmen for meeting with me multiple times to go over this fun budget season that we're in. And yes, everyone has warned me this is the toughest budget, and I drew the short stick as the new council member. Someone once told me that the budget is the most important thing a council member and a mayor will do while we serve our constituents, because we'll be deciding what money will be going towards what with their money. I've had constituents in District 2 tell me they feel left behind and neglected. Constituents that are living paycheck to paycheck or on a fixed income and looking for some breathing room. We all understand that inflation is real. Dominion Energy is about to go up in their energy rates once again. I have no control over Dominion's energy rates. However, I do regard in our city's millage, sanitation, and utilities. We do have over $9 million in unassessed fund balance for the general funds as of today, but we're choosing to only use a little over $500,000 if the proposed 8 mills were to go through. That's too much extra money in our fund balance for us to be asking our citizens to give us more of their hard-earned money. Now is not the time for me to vote yes to continue to take more of their money. I love to continue to work with my teammates up here to map out a plan for my constituents to be as best prepared for an increase in city rates in the future. Thank you.
My turn. I concur with everything. All of it's well said. A millage rate is be careful the way I put this. I guess it's the less painful. It's all money out of people's pocket, but a millage rate, since it can move in time, the value of a mill does hopefully increase in time. You kind of get more bang for your bucks with a millage rate. This potential sanitation increase troubles me a little bit because that really just affects our folks with garbage cans. It doesn't really hit the commercial folks. It don't hit necessarily all the apartments that have a commercial sanitation service. It hits people a little harder, even though the math's certainly not equitable initially between millage rates and sanitation increase. But I agree with Councilman Thomas down there. This is a lot to digest for the taxpayers in one fell swoop. Potentially 3 increases: millage, sanitation, and then the water sewer thing on the other side over there. And I personally cannot support three increases. I can live with the 8 mills, and again, I'm the first one that's going to jump up and protect the fund balance, but there's a limit to what you need to survive, and you can argue anywhere from 2 to 3 to 4 to X number of months in reserve. We're well within those parameters. So it would not bother me to tap in a little more, even though some of it's built in already. And again, three increases is just a little too much for me. But going back, this is wonderful work that you guys did. Again, I've been involved in however many budgets, 17 budgets, whatever of them in my other world over there. This is the most well thought out, comprehensive, well done, giving me options that rather than here it is, take it or leave it. Not that we've ever done that, but this is the best number of options I've seen, and you've given us flexibility, you've given us opportunities, and it is really, really appreciated. So be interesting to see where we go from here. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Well, I just had a couple of thoughts. It doesn't sound like, based on the comments, that we have a viable motion on the table. Does somebody want to make a viable motion before we?
I can attempt to. I'm sorry?
We can make another motion now, is what you're saying?
Right.
Well,
we
we'd
can
have to
amend
take the
this.
other one off the table, but yes, from everybody's comments, it doesn't sound like we have a viable motion on the table.
So should we amend this, or should we
It's,
new motion?
did you make the motion?
I made the
Remind me?
motion.
Okay, are you okay taking your motion off the table?
I am.
We can vote on that, or if you're
No,
okay? And who had the second?
I had the second, so I'm fine with taking it
Okay,
off
if
the
y'all
table.
are fine taking that off the table, then I'd be thrilled for you to make an additional motion right now.
All right, I move that we approve first reading of the FY 24-25 general fund and utility budgets with the strike-through on the $5 sanitation fee increase that would generate $287,100, and move that we fund the capital expenditures, that those were to fund through our unrestricted fund balance.
Okay, so the 8 mills and the 25% increase in utilities,
Just but remove the $5 a month sanitation fee.
right?
fund those items through the unrestricted fund balance. So it keeps the budget.
Is that the correct fund for sanitation?
If I'm understanding the motion, it's proposing to move what the $5 would have generated to pulling it from fund balance. In other words,
Correct. Still,
you
everything
want to
here
remove the
stays funded.
$5, but you're not cutting anything. It's coming from fund balance.
Correct.
I would note, though, that that is not capital stuff. Some may be, but it's actually operating.
It's all what, I'm sorry?
Operating.
Operating.
I just want to make that clear for the public, but yes, that is the unrestricted fund balance. Good.
All right, is that the motion?
Yes.
Do we have a second? Okay, for lack of a second, that motion dies. Is there another motion?
I would work off of Councilman Sachs in the fact of the cost of the 8 mills, we would remain in there. Striking the sanitation. And Tracy, that would mean that we keep everything that we've discussed regarding sanitation, taking the 2 lowest pay grades out. Okay, we can,
If that's your will, otherwise you're striking, you're cutting something that's being proposed. Yes, sir.
and while I've not heard a lot of discussions up here regarding the increase of the utilities, but I could live with what I believe is a 10%, not the 25%, but I could live with the 10% if the remainder of council is interested in that. I would put that in the form of a motion.
All right. So you have a motion to increase 8 mills, to not increase sanitation, and to move those recurring funds, those recurring expenses annually from the fund balance, and to not increase utilities 25%, but to increase it 10%.
That's correct.
Is there a second for that?
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a second. Any discussion?
Tracy, could you help us make sure that we understand that the important things will remain in there? With that, with the 8 mills, our cost of living increases will remain?
On the general fund side, you have not reduced the revenue, you've just moved it around, so that is correct. If you do not approve a 25% increase in utilities, that is not true.
All right, so we had 3 options from the utility. Option A in our budget workshop was 40%, option B was 25%, and option C was 15%, but we're not even going to meet our debt coverage with that motion.
The difference between the two, B and C, that we discussed in work sessions was always starting out at 25. It was the difference in the next year. So what we ultimately need 40 to 50% over the course of 2 to 3 years to keep pace and to get ahead of our capital. And so we presented those options to you to spread it out. 25% is the minimum we've been discussing all along, to include the current cost of things and our debt coverage, and things like increase in salary. Yes, sir. If 10% goes through, we will be forced to figure out what we cut.
Nothing from fund balance?
We are already, even at 25%, and according to what I just read to you, it is all capital's coming from fund balance. That's what you can take from fund balance.
That's all we can take from fund balance?
Yeah, no, what you are proposing for general fund is some recurring costs, some operations. I would
Right,
not
if-
recommend that for utilities. I don't even really, that's why I presented that's why I presented the way I did. If you don't do 25% for utility rate increase that already doesn't cover capital. Capital is coming from fund balance. That's being proposed by the utility director. It only covers operations at our current state, our expected debt coverage, and the increases to COLA that you were asking for.
Could we draw that out a fourth year at 10%? 10, 10, 10, 10?
Not to meet the bond coverage. I mean, that was in the entire workshop. I don't know if that was when you stepped out or not.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think I was in here for those at the end.
I mean, I think you can, I would offer that you could probably drag out year 2 and 3, but you've got to get that, you've got to get some costs up. You've got to get some revenues up fast. And, maybe we look at the difference between, I can't really do it in my head, but for the average user, 25%, the average water and sewer user is $14 additional a month. Some people will hit that, some people won't. So I think the question we need to offer is what's the difference then between 10 and 25?
Y'all want to leave that motion on the table?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so the motion that's on the table, is there any other discussion?
Not for me.
All right, I have a couple of comments. One, with the original motion that was on the table, that what was presented from staff already had $2.1 million being transferred from reserves, roughly, if my math is remotely correct.
That's right.
The
So-
indirect from utilities?
Indirect.
No, I think,
No, ma'am, not in the general fund.
oh, no, so, right, so, but between the two, you're up to almost 3 million of transfers. And that's unusual for us. We don't typically dip into that. I think this is a good year to do that. But just noting that that's already at about 3 million for those two different accounts. I will tell you that I cannot support transferring money from savings, which is when we call it our reserve fund, that's savings. I cannot support transferring from our savings for recurring costs. I'm fully supportive of doing that for one-time costs because that's how we do good budgeting. That's how we do it with our homes. But if we pull out of our savings things that are regular costs and paying people, those are regular costs, then we run out of savings very quickly. So I cannot support that. And there were recommendations in the staff recommendations to do that. There were 2 positions that were suggested to be funded out of the reserves. That's bad budgeting. I can't support that for our citizens. Not doing the $5 a month increase in sanitation would also do that. It would put the operating costs, those recurring costs, coming out of savings, the $287,000. That's dangerous. That's a dangerous way for us to budget. We did have a request to raise sanitation last year, and I think you asked me at the last minute, could we not do that? And I supported not doing that last year, but we are here staring at that because we didn't do that last year. It's a hard budget year. It's not my hardest budget year. When I first became mayor, we were staring at this kind of a mess. But what was worse was half of our public safety fleet had over 100,000 miles or more. We would have officers on the way to a call, and one of them would be like, well, I'm out because my car's down. We had, our sanitation team didn't have rain gear. Inexcusable things like that. We didn't have a dryer for the fire hose. Our men and women who work in the fire department all had different equipment, which meant if they were inside of a structure, they couldn't help one another if somebody's equipment went down. But this council and prior councils has done an amazing job. They've done the hard work. It is one of the hardest things that council members do, is to figure out a budget. And this council's done a great job with that. And what that looks like is, on occasion, you have to raise. No good business stays in business if they don't keep up with costs. We won't stay in business if we don't keep up with costs. We can get rid of our sanitation department. We can get rid of it and not provide that service. And you know what we're doing? We're dumping on our citizens more costs. Because you know how much the private companies cost? A whole lot more than what we're charging. You know what else you don't get? Is our amazing team. And I think you said they're absolutely phenomenal. We get compliments about our team, and saying we get compliments about our whole team all the time, but we get our compliments about our sanitation team all the time. We've done a good job of being mindful about costs and being proactive about costs. Because what we were doing when I first became mayor was patching things and throwing good money after bad. You know, when you try to repair a car that has 100,000 miles on it, it's not going to serve you well. We're not using the taxpayer dollars well. We're not protecting our citizens' money. This council has done that. They've been very careful doing that, which is amazing. And that's why we have the quality that we do, the quality in our amazing team. We actually provide them with the equipment that they need to do the job that we ask them to do. And that's amazing. That's something council should be commended for. We also, it means we keep good staff, because we pay them what they should be paid and what they deserve to be paid. It means that we are one of the cities with some of the lowest costs, but the highest quality of life. That's a pretty impressive needle that we've threaded, and that's kudos to this council. We've got a tough decision before us. And it's a tough thing to walk. And Byron, with you being new, you know, it's something to be a part of. But it's a walk between protecting our citizens and knowing that the way that we do that is by keeping good staff. Because our good staff will take care of our citizens and will provide that great quality of service. If we stop taking care of our staff, then we lose quality, we don't provide great services, and we don't remain a great city. So it's a really tough thing that we have to navigate right now. But we have a motion before us for first reading of the fiscal year 2024-2025 general fund and utility fund budget to increase 8 mills and 10%. That does, the 10% for utilities does not meet our bond coverage. We had a great workshop and great rate study to help us to know that's where we needed to be. We'll be falling short of those municipal responsibilities with this motion, to at least not get that utility to 25%. But I'll call the question.
Mayor Pro Tem James,
Yes.
Councilmember Thomas,
No.
Councilmember Socks.
Yes.
Councilmember Carter.
Yes.
Mayor.
No. Thank you. So moved. You have before you a request from staff to approve the fiscal year 2024-2025 master fee schedule with requested increases and additions.
Madam Mayor, if I may help, unless there's anything else you would wish to remove, I would make the motion to adopt the master fee schedule with the changes you just made. We can adjust.
Does council have a recommendation?
I've got a question, but I don't know if I could ask it without a motion.
And you can make a motion and get it on the table.
Make a motion for discussion,
Second?
That's
or make a motion to approve, Mayor.
Second?
to approve the fiscal year 2024-2025 master fee schedule with requested increases and additions with the changes based on the prior motion and
Yes.
action?
Yes.
Okay. Is that the second?
Second.
That you're seconding? Okay. Go ahead, Councilmember Carter.
Thank you. Tracy, the last time we had a substantial increase in tap fees on the water and sewer side, we had a consultant advise us to get us in line with, quote, everybody else. Did we do that this time? Or are we just basically backing into the number based on math?
Mike, was this done by Raftellus? Yes, this was done as part of the rate study.
Was part of the rate study?
Yes, sir.
Got a piece of it. Okay, thank you. That was my only question.
Any other discussion?
Yeah, good. Tracy, I'm looking at page 220. Water capacity inside. You see where I'm at? Actually, I think it's up on the board now, too. So water capacity inside the city, what was at 465 is now moving up to 1720. Water capacity outside city used to be 930, but it's moving up to the same. So previously, outside of the city was a great deal more than what our inside city citizens were paying, but now it's the same?
Yes, that was, again, the recommendation of Raftellus to get those more in line. I don't, Lawrence, if you'd like to speak to that in particular, but that's not a good enough
Please.
answer.
Can you join us at the podium?
Hey, guys. So capacity fees are determined based on the cost of providing service. And so there is no justifiable reason or basis in assessing a fee that is not dictated by actual costs. And so charging out-of-city ratepayers a capacity fee that is in excess of the in-city ratepayer rate is not justifiable by costs.
That's just to establish the capacity, not the usage. It's different.
Correct. Usage is different than capacity, because remember, capacity costs are based on your ancestral payers have created this system. These are new people that are coming in to take the existing capacity on this utility, and they're recovering their costs of taking that capacity because it's basically building for future expansion of the treatment facilities. And so by not recovering those costs on a dollar cost basis based on what either the existing cost of capacity is or that future expansion cost, you're absorbing those back into rate base for the people that are currently paying rates today, because if you have to borrow money in the future to make expansions of those systems, then everyone who's historically paid for that system is paying for that growth. And so that's the idea of setting a capacity fee that is dictated based on a per REU cost. So you basically make a determination about what the gallons of capacity that you have remaining or what you're going to need in the future on the water system and the sewer system. You assign an actual value to a cost per gallon. You then make an assumption based on the size of a general user. So a residential user is typically going to be 300 ERUs, or residential equivalency units. You assign gallons based on that, and that's how you calculate the fee.
Question?
Yes.
Fiscal year 23-24, inside city was $465 on the screen up there. And now we're proposing it to go to $1720. Outside the city was $930, it's going to the exact same fee as an inside the city person. Why could we have charged much more for out of the city last year, but not now?
So you were either subsidizing the in-city rate through existing ratepayers, or it's an unjustified fee.
We
It's
were
one or-
either
it's one or the other.
subsidizing or it was an unjustified fee
Correct.
previously. So how many years had that been going on?
For a long time.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Okay, any other discussion? Then I'll call the question.
Mayor Pro Tem James,
No.
Councilmember Thomas,
No.
Councilmember Socks,
No.
Councilmember Carter,
No.
Mayor.
Yes. Motion fails. Can council please give staff guidance on what you would like for them to bring back to you for a master fee schedule if you're not supporting this?
I personally want a great deal more explanation of why our inside the city citizens have paid less in the past, while outside of the city has paid more. I appreciate your legal opinion on that and your legal direction, but that's a surprise, is what it is, for our citizens, or for the people that are in city, all of a sudden, to be paying the same thing that out-of-city people pay. So, Tracy, I know you will. You'll let me know a little bit more about that, and we wrap my arms around it. That's the direction I'll give you on that.
Yeah, I'd also like to see, I can't seem to find it super easily at the moment, but what these proposed rates compare to our neighboring cities from the standpoint of future development.
The rest of you who voted no, can you give some guidance, please?
I stand on the same side as Tim. Didn't know those answers.
Councilman Carter, anything you want to see staff bring
No,
back?
I'm curious as to, Mr. Flynn has said forever or a long time, they've been like this. And again, since I've been here, I know we had a consultant look at it. Why the radical change now? Same reason, same question with the meeting our bonding obligations. If we were walking close to this threshold of not being in a good position to make our bond payment, how did we get here and why didn't we know about it? That's the only question I have there.
And I think if I'm, do you have? Sure.
Sorry, guys. So back to the underlying question on the rate side. So the rate adjustments that have been proposed by Raftellus are built based on what your long-term, needs are for the system. Filling those positions that have otherwise been empty is a large part of the operating side of the rate perspective. The other piece and the need for it is that you also transfer $2 million out of the utility fund to the general fund every single year. And so what's happened is those costs have continued to escalate. This coverage requirement is a legal mandate under the terms of your master bond documents. And if you fail coverage to your bondholders, you can be sued by those bondholders, and it's an event of default under your bonds. And a trustee gets to come in and tell council, you no longer have independent rate discretion on setting these rates. So whatever you go back to, based on what that adjustment is, we need to be cognizant of the fact that there are, legitimate costs that are out there, and you have made covenants to your bondholders that you will continue to sustain rates at a level sufficient to meet that minimum 115 coverage ratio. If you fall below that, you will be legally mandated to do it under the terms of your bond documents. That being said, it ultimately falls back to staff to now figure out how to make adjustments internally to make sure that that doesn't happen. So that's on the rate side of it. With respect to these capacity fees, remember, the folks that are paying these fees are not currently customers. They very well may be taxpayers, but it's someone who does not currently receive utility service from the city of Cayce. And so be that out of the city or inside the city, they've never paid a dime into the system. And so what you're trying to do is recover the costs that the people that have been here for a really long time and have paid to create this system have otherwise done. So this is truly growth paying for growth. And if you don't have your in-city payers paying the same thing that your out-of-city payers are paying, you have no way to justify how that cost is determined. And that's ultimately what this boils down to. It's an equitable determination, and the reason those numbers have gone up is that the cost of utility service has exploded. And the idea of potentially having to go through the process of expand your wastewater plant or add capacity on the water system, which is obviously a cheaper expansion, the costs have just significantly escalated. And so we've gone from $10 a gallon to build a new wastewater treatment plant to $45 a gallon. That's a tremendous number. You know, if you were to try and build your wastewater treatment plant today, I believe what is our current capacity? 20 MG, 25 MGD. If you built that for roughly $75 million between you and the other participants, the numbers that we're talking about today, that's in the neighborhood of $750 million to construct. That's why those numbers have gotten the way they are, is because as you start absorbing that capacity on those old costs, you have to be able to make up those costs in time by either raising rates or making the folks that are using that capacity pay for it now. And that's the whole idea behind the discrepancy.
Thank you. I have a technical question too. So this is the fee schedule that just got voted down. This is the first reading, but by law, we have to have a balanced budget by the end of June. And so our second reading is where we were going to do second reading, but we would technically, would that be a second reading or a first reading if that first reading failed?
We still need 2 readings.
Yeah, I think you would want to.
We just have to schedule.
So we're going to have a special meeting because guys, is there a way that you can approve this on first reading with some changes in it so that you're not making staff come for another meeting? We've already had 4 work sessions on the budget alone. Is there something that we could look, Danny, let me ask you this, can we revisit that vote? Can we revisit that vote if council is amenable at all?
Well, you're still taking motions, so somebody can make another motion. Because that motion failed.
Okay.
We're on the master fee schedule now,
Correct,
not the budget, the master fee schedule now.
but it's part of the budget. So
It includes the utility, some of the utility.
It's, right, there's a lot of stuff outlined in there, but that also takes 2 readings, and this is the first reading, the second reading is at the end of the month. So is there something on here, can y'all look through this to see, is there a way you can say, if we take out this or take out that,
The way they did the.
you see what I'm saying?
Yes, ma'am, I see what
To
you're saying.
approve it on first
Can we have 2
reading?
readings in one night?
No,
We can't do that?
no,
Certain days between it, isn't it?
7.
Days?
7 days in between it.
7 days?
Yeah.
And you've got a holiday in June, and so, I mean, I'm trying to prevent staff time from having to come to another meeting if,
You've effectively made recommendations on the master fee schedule with your last motion. You took out the 25, you made it 10. You reduced or zeroed out a sanitation fee increase. If what's in the master fee schedule is virtually everything you just discussed in the budget, separate the capacity fees. So you could just make those changes to the master fee schedule and keep it compatible with what you just did on the budget and give it first reading.
So it could be reflective to the budget we passed.
With anything additional you want to modify, which it sounds like you might want to, or pass it on first and make us get those answers to you by second on the capacity fees.
I'm fine with, as long as it's reflective to the budget that was passed.
Right, we would, yes, you would just say, whatever you've already approved in the budget as a fee, reflect that in the master fee schedule, and bring back more information to you on the capacity.
Is that fair?
You're matching what you just did.
Makes sense.
I'm good with that.
That good?
Yeah, it makes
Okay,
sense to
we
me, yeah. I mean, do we have a motion on the table, Mayor?
No, we don't. So, do you want to make one, or do you want me to suggest?
I'd like to make the motion that the first reading for the master fee schedule be approved reflective of the budget that we have passed in the previous vote.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All right, then I'll call the question.
Mayor Pro Tem James,
Yes.
Councilmember Thomas,
No.
Councilmember Socks.
Yes.
Councilmember Carter,
Yes.
Mayor,
Yes, thank you, so moved. Next, we have discussion and approval of ordinance 2024-07, amending city code, section 28-113, possession of unlawful weapons. This is the first reading.
Madam Mayor, we didn't actually vote on the budget ordinance. We
Yes, they did.
voted on two sections. You voted on a general fund budget, and then you voted on the utility budget or master fee schedule. But you have before you the motion, the ordinance, the budget ordinance.
Okay, where is that?
We need two votes on that. That's
Where-
the
So that's where we take everything together.
What page is that on?
4A. Oh.
So you want them to read ordinance 2024-06 is your ordinance,
Yeah, so we'll need a first reading on that.
and you would modify it again to make it reflective of the prior budget
Does
expectations.
anybody know what page that's on?
222.
Thank you.
Okay, so right after what we just did, so we're in line, that was just the next thing we needed. Yes, okay.
You're just doing the two parts of the budget and then now the ordinance for it.
All right, is there a motion to approve the ordinance?
And that's ordinance 2024-06.
Yes, sir.
And how do I need to word that? Just approval of the ordinance as reflected in earlier vote?
In the,
Modified by previous motions.
yes,
Okay,
thank you.
Mayor, I make a motion that we approve ordinance 2024-06 as modified by earlier motions.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. I'll call the question.
Mayor Pro Tem James,
Yes.
Councilmember Thomas,
No.
Councilmember Socks,
Yes.
Councilmember Carter,
Yes.
Mayor,
Yes, thank you, so moved. Next, we have discussion and approval of ordinance 2024-07, amending city code, section 28-113, possession of unlawful weapons. This is the first reading.
Yes, this is a required amendment to our ordinance based on the recent state law change that allows for open carry. The city's ordinance needs to be amended to remove pistol from that list of things that would be unlawful for a person to have. So the new version should read, "It shall be unlawful for any person to carry on or about his person, concealed or not concealed, any weapon, dark butcher knife, case knife 6 inches or longer, sword or spear, metal knuckles, razor, nunchucks, throwing stars, or any other weapon of offense within the corporate limits of the city." It simply removes pistol from that list. Staff recommends council approve the amendment to section 28-113 entitled Possession of Lawful Weapons. It is a first reading.
Move that we approve the amendment to section 28-113 entitled Possession of Unlawful Weapons.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? I'll call the question.
Mayor Pro Tem James,
Yes.
Councilmember Thomas,
Yes.
Councilmember Socks.
Yes.
Councilmember Carter,
Yes.
Mayor,
Yes, thank you, so moved. We have consideration and approval of a resolution approving leave policy and procedure for employees of the city of Cayce.
The white papers have gotten jumbled. I think this was brought to you before, back in March. We were looking for a way to be more competitive in our recruitment and retention of good employees. You've shown a track record of doing that with salaries and parental leave that was approved recently. To continue to be competitive, we did look at some comparisons of our annual leave. We are slow to adding extra time. You have to be here for a fair amount of time, and that's really difficult to recruit that middle management that has a lot of time, maybe stored at other places where they work. So what's proposed before you is an accrued annual leave that would change from 5 days for hire to 1 year to 10 days in the first 5 years of employment. And it would move to 15 days, years 5 through 15, and then it would increase after 15 years to 20 days. You have in your packet a comparison of other places. We did do that. We had done that before too, but to show you where that lists and how it's a competitive recommendation. We also would recommend when you do that, if you do that, that right now we do allow for payout of a maximum of 400 hours that could have been accrued. We would recommend reducing that, but grandfathering in the folks that already have that amount from 400 to 320. We also recommend that bereavement leave be amended to allow for 10 days of paid leave to somebody who has lost a spouse or a child. We have had a couple of those over the last few years, and it's just dramatic to ask them to be back to work after 3 days. So those are the two changes that are before you in our policy. We are also asking, though, that if you adopt this by resolution, you're actually adopting the city's entire leave policy. Right now, it's embedded in our employee handbook, which makes it difficult for me to make changes to day-to-day things that don't really need to come before council. So I'd like to pull the leave out of that handbook and let it be a policy that you've adopted, because it is something that you have authority over approving or not. So if you did this by resolution, you would be approving the whole leave package, which is what's in front of you or in the document. The only thing I'm proposing changing tonight are the accrued annual leave and those bereavement days. Happy to try and answer any questions.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve a resolution approving leave policy and procedures for employees of the city of Cayce to go into effect on July 4th, 2024?
Motion to approve, Mayor.
Second.
Okay, any discussion?
I can't even ask. Potential variations of people, when we have people on annual leave, especially in public sector, well, all positions are important. We have to, somebody obviously has to work. Is all that buried into this budget?
Well, actually, that's not true. Actually, for the most of our employees, no, there isn't somebody that covers their shift. We're not making, widgets. It's actually, when I'm off, nobody's technically covering me. So there's actually minimal overtime. And they do the same with police and fire. Obviously, it's covered, but it's usually covered by, say, a lieutenant on staff or somebody that's not typically in the field. So there's very limited overtime that's embedded in annual leave. We rarely, there's no overtime. Nobody else is working my shift. It's still the same salary, and that's most of our employees.
Question, could I ask the chief a question? Chief of Fire?
You can ask me if you can ask
Oh,
Chief.
I'm sorry, Mayor, may I please ask Chief of Fire for a question?
I would say, why don't you ask the city manager that question?
Okay. So if a fireman were to go on vacation, another fireman doesn't have to take their place just in case we have an emergency in the city?
Yeah, it's not left unattended. It's either covered by those that can't cover it, or we do have overtime already embedded in our budget every year. It has never been, this is not something that's adding to our overtime budget.
Okay. That was just for clarity,
But for most of our employees that are salaried, there's no, like I said, there's nobody that's coming in and covering for me. There's nobody that's covering for.
And I wouldn't expect that.
Well, I'm just saying,
you got two able-handed right-handed men.
But that's
no
a
doubt.
lot of our employees. So I know that was probably part of the question about cost. There isn't truly a cost involved in most of our leave. And the way their shifts are working, they often can cover that differently they work 3 on, 2 off. It works out.
I guess I'm shocked by that, because I would have anticipated, especially, with needing a certain amount of emergency personnel at a time, I would have certainly expected leadership to put somebody in that position if somebody was out for a day or a week. But you're saying they use on-staff people to do that, so it's not gonna affect the overtime at all?
In most cases, no, but I'm not saying we're short that person.
Okay.
It's being covered. I mean, there's, Jim, is that?
Jim?
Jim.
Sorry. They have ample enough people on shift right now if one should go out, but if you have two out, then one would have to cover the shift.
I think I can speak on the majority of council. I certainly support this, but at the same time, I was feeling that we needed to put something in the budget to be able to cover it. Because certainly firehouse can't be down one person. And police department, maybe investigations can from time to time, but a patrol on the street couldn't. So my intent was that we would see an increase in the line item for overtime. So that's good news.
And if that does, then we can readjust for next year, we can see, but we're not anticipating those increases.
Good.
And what about, did y'all talk to other cities? What did they say about that budget?
It's a normal operation for those.
I mean, what we're proposing is comparable to all other places, and nobody put a
You
value.
talk about the policy and the leave
Yeah.
amount, yeah,
Well, I
I
meant,
get that.
no, I meant the budget. Yeah, the budget impact.
They didn't put a cost on it per se. They said it was a benefit that they just built in.
Benefits should be costly if they're good. I have no problem whatsoever with the benefit.
Any other discussion?
Ma'am, thank you.
I'll call the question.
Mayor Pro Tem James,
Yes.
Councilmember Thomas,
Yes.
Councilmember Socks.
Yes.
Councilmember Carter.
Yes.
Mayor,
Yes, thank you, so moved. You have before you a request to approve, to enter the following committee-approved minutes into the city's record. You have Cayce Housing Authority annual meeting from February 20th and their regular meeting from February 20th. You have the Museum Commission from April 3rd, the Accommodations Tax Committee from April 9th, the Cayce Housing Authority special meeting from April 9th, and the Events Committee from April 9th.
Motion to approve all.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? I'll call the question.
Mayor Pro Tem James,
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember Thomas.
Yes.
Councilmember Socks.
Yes.
Councilmember Carter.
Yes.
Mayor,
Yes, thank you so much. We have the city manager's report.
Just two quick updates. The complicated sewer repairs that we've had going on Railroad Avenue near State Street for some time is completed. It is open to travel, and the pump that's been there for a while is removed. And the boardwalk repairs on the Riverwalk are complete, and it will be open in the morning.
Yay.
all I have.
That's great
Will be
news.
open in the morning?
Thank
It
you.
wasn't by tonight, but it should be closed soon here. So, yes, sir.
Nice. Any council comments?
Yes, ma'am. So, Tracy, recently I've been speaking to some West Columbia City councilmen and women about potentially our cities meeting at least once a year to just meet to see how our cities can continue to work better together and see if there's any resources we can pull together to make both of our cities a better place to live, work, and play. And they love the ideal. They love the idea of all of us meeting at least one time a year to see, is there anything that we can do to continue to work together to the best of our abilities? So I would really love it if you could reach out to Brian Carter to see when that meeting could take place, more importantly this year, so then we can go ahead and get the ball rolling with getting our cities meeting. And hopefully other members on this council and the mayor would think that us meeting with West Columbia is good for our city. And is there any comments? I'm just curious.
It would have to be a publicly noticed
Yeah,
meeting.
yes, ma'am, yes, ma'am.
I just want to clarify, you're asking for councils to meet?
Yes,
Okay, because
Yeah.
staff talk on a regular basis. Okay.
yes, ma'am, yes, ma'am.
But
So-
with staff there, I mean, you want leadership with
Yes.
the council.
Yes, yes, ma'am. And then, Councilman Carter, you are the historian up here on this chamber. So please tell us about Monkey Springs on Branch Creek. Please tell us about that and the history of how this could have happened in the city of Cayce.
First off, this story, obviously this thing got legs this week with some Facebook posts or some social media posts. And the story about the monkeys getting loose from a circus, that was news to me. And there was some back and forth about when the tributary creek ditch, whatever you want to call it, was named. I have a map that's dated 1950, and it says Monkey Springs Branch on that map. Now, that's almost 75 years ago. But other than that, I can't add a whole lot to
Yes, sir.
what happened. Again, I'm a pretty old guy, but not quite that old. So, I don't know.
No, I appreciate that.
I went down and looked at the sign. And to be honest with you, I had not paid any attention to it, but it's my understanding it's gone, so I don't know.
Yes. Jim notified me, and I wrote by too, and it was gone, and SCDOT did come and take it down, Jim? Perfect. Well, I just want to make it clear to everyone that our city, nor council and the mayor, had no jurisdiction of putting that sign up. I just want to make sure that's clear to our citizens that we had nothing to do with that. But we did work to get it down. So that shows that when our citizens come to us with complaints or concerns, we do take it very seriously. So let's continue to work together as a city to continue to improve the city of Cayce. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? I'd like to just make a comment. So one of our citizens who is the most regular attendee of our council meetings invited me to go to church with him at Gant Street Baptist Church. And this was May 19th. They had a Back the Blue service. And at that service, as the representative from Cayce who was there, they gave me this gorgeous book that is not going to come out right now, but it says, it's the prayers that shaped America. And I would actually like to present it to Gerald for inviting me. So, thank you. No, Chief, you're in it, you're not. Good try, though. Good try.
You're not gonna jump out of this. Thank you so much for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Mayor, I have two things I'd like to mention. Jenny Jordan, who lives on the Avenues, she was voted at Cayce Elementary as the Administrator of the Year. She works so hard with the students down there. I just wanted to give her a shout out. And also in that school, the Assistant Principal, Ashley Calder, she was voted Mistress America for representing South Carolina, right here at Cayce Elementary. Pretty awesome. Pretty awesome for those two. Thanks to our educators and everything you guys do.
Question, Mayor. When we hear of these amazing things like that is so amazing. What's our process to recognize them here at our council chambers, like at our meetings, to do more of that, to, bring out more of our community, members that are doing amazing things in our community? Like, what's our process so then our citizens know, so then we can start to recognize them more here in our chambers?
Well, this is a business meeting of the council of the city of Cayce, so I think that's something maybe we could talk through.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you. All right.
Briefly, Mayor, I can't find it right now. We got another email of praise for our sanitation department from a lady in Moss Creek. I think we all got it, or you forwarded it to us. And just one more in a long list of accolades for Thomas and his outfit out there. They most of the time when I have heard of an issue, before I make a phone call to Tracy, the thing's resolved. I mean, that's how good they are. They ahead of me, which is not hard, but they stay ahead. But again, another accolade for sanitation.
Yes, awesome. Thank you. All right, we have executive session for receipt of legal advice relating to claims and potential claims by and against the city and other matters covered by the attorney-client privilege, including an update on Lexington County's cancellation of road maintenance agreement and claim for improvements to Spencer Place Road. Do I hear a motion to go into executive session for said reasons?
Motion to do so, Mayor.
Second.
Okay, I'll call the question.
Mayor Pro Tem James.
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember Thomas.
Yes.
Councilmember Socks.
Yes.
Councilmember Carter.
Yes.
Mayor.
Yes, thank you. So moved. We started, we're on. Thank you, Jim, we're on. Thank you. Thank you. So no action was taken in executive session except to come out of executive session. I don't believe we have any possible actions by council this evening in follow-up to executive session, so I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, Mayor?
Second?
I'll call the question.
Mayor Pro Tem James,
Yes.
Councilmember Thomas.
Yes.
Councilmember Socks.
Yes.
Councilmember Carter,
Yes.
Mayor.
Yes, thank you so moved. Thank you all so much.